My name is Ivan Kamal. I'm the program coordinator for the Bachelor of Creative Technologies. But I'm also going to be talking, so that's the top one. I'm also going to be talking about Bachelor of Software Engineering, and the program coordinator for that course is TC Byra. Now, the my background, I used to work in a games company, and I'm an immigrant to New Zealand, and then I grew up in Wellington. Eventually studied 3D animation, and went on to get a job working in a games company. Worked there for 7 years, and then after a set of earthquakes, I decided to maybe I need to look for something else. Didn't really think education was something I would enjoy, but applied to media design school, and then became a teacher, and I fell in love with it. And just seeing that moment when the student realizes exactly why we're doing what we're doing, and then also eventually goes on to get a job in the games industry. I found it really personally very self-fulfilling, and I've been teaching now for 10 years. So I have 7 years games experience working in a games company, and I have 10 years teaching now. Um, and in that time, the New Zealand games industry has grown to about 1,100 people, and a quarter of the games industry in New Zealand is media design school graduates, both from the creative technologies and software engineering degrees. So there was a question that was asked earlier for anybody who wasn't in the chat at that point, whether students get to collaborate together. It is really important for us that the software engineers and the creative technology students get to work together. Now, I'll say this caveat, and you can see this as we call them colloquially games degrees. Creative technologies, if you went to study that anywhere else, it could mean so many different things. So, and some universities, it might mean 3D printing. And some universities, it might mean doing wearable technology, like a technology that detects your heartbeat or how much you're sweating or something like that. That's also creative technologies. Drones, advanced drone type stuff, engineering also could be considered creative technologies. Software engineering in many universities would mean web development, and it could mean server management. It could mean a host of various different things. At Media Design School, we have chosen to look at both of these disciplines through the lens of games. So our software engineers are learning software engineering principles through the lens of games. Yeah, you're writing code, but does it run? Does your game run? Using a game engine, using C++ or C#, how are you going to make sure that what you're doing isn't just an abstraction? You actually can see it, you can play it, you can give it to your friends and family to try out. Same thing goes with creative technologies as well, right? We're making sure that you're not just making pretty pictures. I use this as a prop. Is it going to run on your device? Is it going to run on a particular device that you're working on, right? You need to have those understanding of the limitations of the things that we're trying to create. So that's the difference. Yes, when you're graduating, for some students are concerned that like, is my degree going to say games on it? Your degree is going to say Bachelor of Creative Technologies or Bachelor of Software Engineering after you graduate. You might end up working in a field that's not games as well. But you're going to be learning these principles through the lens of video games. And over the last 10 years, we've found it extremely useful that's the context around which we're framing all of this. So for the creative technology students, we're going to be talking about like Photoshop and concept art and all these things, but also making sure that our students understand there's a distinct difference between, this is a student work, by the way, there's a distinct difference between concept art for games and film. And then also there's a difference between concept art and illustration, right? So when you're making an illustration, you might be wanting to tell a story. And when you're doing concept art, so these are more illustrative works. But we want to make sure that when you're graduating and you're trying to apply for work, you have a distinct understanding as to what are the expectations from those roles as you're going into industry. Now, we also teach 3D. The 3D software package in the Bachelor of Technologies that I'm going to keep calling it BCT, so I'm going to be shorter. What we teach in BCT is Maya. That's our core modeling tool. We cover a little bit of 3D Studio Max for animation, or more than a little bit, but it's like a year-long course. We cover ZBrush, we cover Substance. We don't really touch on Blender too much. And there's nothing wrong with Blender. I personally love Blender. I think it's a fantastic tool. But most of the game studios in New Zealand at the moment are using Maya. And for that reason, we're using Maya as well. Could that change? That might change, right? There's also potential that you might join halfway through, studios start to shift to Blender as well. We're very ready for that switch when it does happen, but because all the studios we ask every year, we have a good connection to industry. Say, what kind of tools do you want us, our graduates to have in order to make your studios tick over and work well? And they say we're using Maya. Maya is the predominant tool. And for a large organization to be switching, for a games company to be switching software packages like that, has a cost associated with it. So a lot of the tools, export tools, import tools, are built around Maya. So that's the reason we're covering it. But again, if you're using Blender, you'll be fine learning Maya as well. The more tools you know, the better off you are. The way we focus on our 3D course is that in year one, our students learn low poly modeling. So imagine, again, to use the phone as a prop, modeling for something that could run on a mobile device, right? And then in year two, we do something a little bit more high poly. We're doing ZBrush and we're doing baking, and it's this introduction. So even if you only do year one, and for whatever reason you decide, oh, you know what, not for me, I'm going to go do something else. You have the skill set to be able to be making low poly games already, like low poly art, and you're going to make some games by yourself in year one as well. You have that skill set, and then a more advanced version of that is in year two, which is harder naturally. But that's the way we structure the 3D side of things. Now, it's also really important for us. There's some assignments. So assignment like this gun, which is a year two assignment from submission from one of our students. I think it's one of the few assignments where we actually dictate exactly what you need to model. So we give the concept art and we say, you have to model this. In the other assignments, most of the time we just say, there's a brief, but you have a certain room for interpretation. And the reason for that, both of those have strengths. Usually when our students are applying for work, people want to see both. Are you able to follow a brief down to a T? Can you follow a concept or a sketch? And the other one is, do you have room for interpretation and strength in that creative side of things? So this is 4 different students, went on to work in different places. The one on the bottom right, this is Jessica Lou's work. She went on to work at Pickpock in Wellington, a place I used to work. After that, she went to work for Playside, and now she is working for Blizzard remotely from New Zealand, which is pretty cool, in the World of Warcraft franchise. Max Bainbridge on the left-hand side with the buildings, went to work at A44, and now he's working at a different company. Caspian, top right, one of our students, he built that for his third year portfolio project and got a job from that as well. The buildings, yeah, very, very strong, hand-painted aesthetic. Interesting thing about her, she's studying, I think, science or something, and then decided she wanted to do art. Came in and just kind of like a duck to water, and she just absorbed all the information that we were sharing, and went on to again very big success, working in the remotely for an American larger company from New Zealand. But all of these are unique, and it's important for us that not everyone's just not everyone is coming out with, imagine everyone graduated and they just had this building and it looked nice, but everyone was just doing that building. That would be not as impressive. It'd be impressive to a certain extent, but it's much better that people are able to express themselves and have unique portfolios, because everyone has unique interests as well, right? Now, Bachelor of Creative Technologies is, BCT is quite technical. You are going to be making your own games. You are going to be doing scripting. You're not going to become a programmer from it, but you are going to be challenged in a technical way. So if you're thinking that you're going to be only doing drawing for 3 years, no, it's definitely a lot more harder than that. But as a result of that, when you're graduating, you can absolutely make your own games if you wish to do so, and publish them as well if you want to do that. Now, before I get into the programming side of things, something else I just want to bring up, a point I want to bring up. Something that we really prize is principles first, tools second. Now, in order to learn principles, you do need to understand the tools. What I mean by principles first, the human anatomy hasn't changed in the last 200,000 years, maybe more. And it probably is not going to change. The proportions of the human anatomy are probably not going to change for another 200,000 years. Understanding human anatomy is more important than knowing how to use Photoshop or Maya or Blender or whatever else. So we focus on those things, and we also cover tools, right? Because the principles, color theory, composition, all of that stuff is going to be around for a long time. It's been around for a long time, and it's going to be around for a long time still. Software can change, right? So as the artists are focusing on the core principles of art through the lens of video games and the tools that we're using, the programmers in year one are focusing on C++ programming and mathematics, and they look at doing game engine stuff as well, and even making their own game engine type projects. So again, we're focusing on C++ because number one, Unreal Engine uses C++. Number two, it is one of the more kind of high level languages that lower level or rather languages that you can use where you can actually make large scale adjustments to the way how the computer is going to be processing information. Cool. So here's some of the projects that you will be working on if you choose to become a software engineer. Physics, networking, game AI. Game AI is very different. You may have been in the previous presentation by TC Bayrak about AI course that we also have. Game AI is different. It's kind of like faking AI. It's not actually processing large data sets. When I used to work at Pickpock, I talked to one of the programmers there, and he was a software programming lead on Jackass the game. That was the first game that I ever worked on, by the way. And he said, I was like, oh, it must be so hard. I asked him, it must be so hard programming AI for games. And he said, you just draw a line between the gun and the head of the enemy, and they just keep running away until they break the line. And then you know the gun can't hit them, and then that's how they find cover. I went, oh, that's actually kind of simple. So a lot of the tricks that game programmers use, it's not using big data sets. It's just using simple tricks to mimic behavior of a unit or an enemy, and to make it feel a little bit more interesting than somebody just standing there and getting shot at with arrows or whatever else it might be. We also look at graphics programming and tool development, and also mobile development as well. So now something this is kind of a side point a little bit, but I was reading this book a little while ago by a person who invented the field of cybernetics, and he was basically he was famous for that. He invented the way that anti-air guns were used in World War II. Rather than shooting exactly where the plane is or where you see it, you calculate the speed of the bullet, the speed of the plane, and you shoot where it's going to be. So when the bullet gets to where the plane is, and the plane's here, you get to that system is usually referred to as a feedback loop, right? And you may have actually stood next to a speaker with a microphone, and then it goes, woo, right? That's feedback. And the reason it's feedback is the speaker is making a sound that the microphone's hearing, and now it's building up, and that's what we refer to as feedback usually. It's really important whatever field you choose to do in the future, it's important for you to pick a field that has a fast feedback loop. And what by that I mean, even if you don't choose to study games, you want to get updated as to whether you're improving on something quickly and easily, right? If you had to learn how to play darts, imagine you threw a dart and then you received an email at the end of the day and it said a little to the left. It would be impossible to improve with that kind of feedback. It's too slow of a feedback loop. So the reason game programmers are usually some of the best programmers in the world is because they have a direct feedback loop of whether their code is not just functional, but effective with the use of frame rate. So you can write perfectly functional code, but when you run it, the game lags. That's bad. So for that reason, game programmers try to shave off milliseconds from the frame rate by making sure their code is not just functional, but also optimal. And for that reason, game programmers are sought after in the world and other fields as well outside of games, because again, they make sure that things run really well, not just the fact that they run, period. So for that reason, I would recommend, yeah, if you want to study programming, studying programming through the lens of video games is a very, very effective way of you progressing in that particular area. Now we use Unreal and Unity engines. These are the modern engines everyone's using, right? Some of you may have experimented with them already. If you haven't, highly recommend downloading them. They're both free. They're free until you make like I think it's like $500,000 or $1 million, and then you're gonna have to start giving a cut of that. Anything above that amount, you're gonna have to give a cut to the engine developers. Engines change. And just like I was talking about Maya and Photoshop and whatever other tools are important in order for us to get the job done. But um, they, in the process of the 3 years of study here, when I studied teaching here, we used to teach CryEngine as well, right? And CryEngine, but this is before Unity and Unreal went free. And then it was kind of like, yeah, it's a good engine as well, but those things do change. So principles first, tools second, and remember that tools can change over the duration of the time. Now there's something special that we do with software engineering students, because it doesn't necessarily impact art all that much, as we have a relationship with PlayStation. So we have dev kits for PlayStation, and our programming students are able to understand how they can actually run things on the PlayStation on a hardware device. Hardware is always going to be a limiting factor for games. Hardware is not a factor for film, right? As long as you have a large enough frame rate and something that can stream it, then you're fine. But with games, because we're trying to make sure that it runs at 60 frames per second, any hardware limitations that you need to be able to understand loopholes and workarounds on how to make sure that things run smoothly. Now, some people ask, what about game design? I want to be more of a game designer. Both art and programming students have to learn game design throughout the course because it applies if you want to work in the game space. It's much better for you to be an artist who knows design or a designer who knows art, or the same thing goes with programming, rather than being designer and abstraction where you're just telling other people that, oh, I want it to be like this, I want it to be like that. But if you don't understand the discipline of programming or art, you are going to be very limited in your ability to communicate with the team. So for that reason, at the moment, we don't have a distinct discipline for design. We just expect all of our students to, as part of the course of the 3 years of study, to partake in designing physical and board games, and physical games, digital games, and working together in teams and the design assignments. Now, it is a degree. So that means over the course of 3 years, you're going to have to do some academic writing. Now, academic writing isn't going to be about art history or something like that. It's everything to do with games. So we're asking you to do research. If you like certain games, it would be anecdotal for you to say, well, me and my friends play this game because it's great. It could be a factual statement, but it's not necessarily quantitative, right? It's more anecdotal. What we want is for you to look at books, look at research and other academics in the space who are discussing and critiquing various games, and then you're going to be writing research on that. So we want you to be as well informed as you could be on that particular subject matter. Now, you might think gambling mechanics in games are horrible. You might think gambling games and mechanics are great, but you need to make a good argument as to why you think those things. And usually in the process of doing your research, you might change your opinion, and that's fine. But as long as your opinion is informed, that's the most important thing. This is actually a game that came out of one of these projects. This is a game that was trying to communicate to the player the condition of chronic fatigue. So chronic fatigue is a person who doesn't necessarily have enough energy throughout the day to be able to finish all their tasks. So the game was kind of stacked against the player where you have only, let's say, like 7 points of energy, and then you have like 12 points of tasks to do. So how are you going to manage your day knowing that you actually have a very limited pool of energy that you can dip into? That could sometimes in an instant actually, some tasks might actually take more points than you anticipated on different days as well. So again, these are research assignments, but they're research assignments to do with games. And we want to make sure that you, again, you know the tools, you know the design, you're working with others. So there's collaborative elements, but you're also very well read on the subject rather than just kind of inventing things on the fly and saying, well, it's a great game because I like it. Or it's another common one is it's a great game because it sold a lot of copies. And it's like, well, that's a good start, but why do you think it sold a lot of copies? Well, it's because it's popular, but why is it popular? And then the further down you dig down, you realize that there's an underserved population of players that used to play a similar kind of game. And when this came out, it basically scratched the itch. And then now you're making that deeper connection, and now you're going to be more valuable to a game company that you're going to be applying at. Cool. We big in events. We do girls in games, trying to encourage more women to join the games industry. It's improving. It's been improving over the last several years, but it's definitely still a relatively male dominated industry. So we do these events. We don't actually mind if the women attending the conference or the events end up studying with us, as long as kind of just making sure that they have an idea that it's definitely something out there for them if they want to do. We have end-of-year showcases. For the last several years, we've had games industry come onto campus to interview students. I can't guarantee that it's going to keep happening. It really depends on the need of the studio. And sometimes studios just want to talk to the students who have the best grades in class, right? Sometimes they not the, we don't reveal the grades. What happens is we send them resumes. They pick the ones that they like the most, no matter what the grades are, and then usually it's the students with the higher grades that get picked, and then they talk to that select group of students because again, sometimes the classes can be quite large. Sometimes studios want to talk to everyone, just to look for somebody who might stand out in other ways that they might not necessarily have a finished portfolio. But we do have a pretty good connection to industry, and for that reason, I think that's why quarter of the games industry in New Zealand is our graduates. We also do events of, when possible, of students selling their art during our begin in the art booths as well. That fluctuates of whether whether it's happening or not. But again, if we get the opportunity to do so, we try to facilitate for that. As far as industry connectivity, another way we try to stay connected to industry is we have regular industry talks. Here's some people: Samari Violence, CEO of Pickpock; Paul Richards, a concept artist for Fortnite; a friend of one of our lecturers from the States; Mike Page and Matt Creighton, the technical director and art director of a studio here in New Zealand, up in Auckland. We had other people: Pickpock, Rocketworks, other studios, somebody from Riot Games as well. So we do these talks. Some of them are online, some of them are in person, some of them are in person only, some of them are, I mean, I don't, well, the online only ones are usually the ones that are remote. So yeah, again, an opportunity for you to kind of get a grasp of the larger industry that is video games across the whole planet. We had Dean Hall. This is during one of the lockdowns. If you guys don't know, Dean Hall owns a studio here in Auckland called Rocketworks. They made a game called Icarus, and he's also the creator, the original creator of DayZ as well. So he lives actually quite close to the campus and comes up every once in a while. But this was during lockdowns, and yeah, we did quite a cool talk and kind of question and answer session as well. Mark Fleeg, senior VFX artist on Destiny and Halo, and Fear as well. I'm going to show some game projects actually, and I'm not sure if audio is sharing or not. You guys can tell me if it's not. I think we should be okay. I could talk over it anyway. Is the audio coming through? Nope, no, I don't. Okay, I'll turn it down and I'll just talk over it. So this is a game project called Sky Noon. This is a third year project of 3 artists and 3 programmers. The interesting thing, so this started as a school project. After graduation, 1 artist went on to work in Pickpock, 1 programmer went on to work for Halo. The other 4, the 2 programmers and 2 artists, continued working on this project, found a publisher, published the game. And then as they were thinking about what were they going to do next, Hi-Res Studios in the UK decided to hire the whole team to work on their, at the time, top secret project. So they went from being students to being published game developers to being senior artists and programmers and a very established game studio. Hi-Res Studios is the game studio that made Smite. So yeah, it's very interesting and popular success story that we like to share. We like to share our student success stories. I'm sure all schools do want to do that. Fortnite, this is a game that was played on board of Fortnite. Barbecue food, fighting against other barbecue food on top of a barbecue, trying to push each other off. Now, this is not part of the assignment. The students don't have to make an actual physical arcade, but one of the students was a panel beater before he joined the course, and he had a quite handy individual, and he found a barbecue, a broken barbecue for sale, brand new, but it was just not working. So they retrofitted it with an arcade and a computer inside of it, and they would take it to events. And we have a copy. They've made 2, and one of these is on campus that we roll out every once in a while. But basically, you can just play that game on a barbecue, which is a barbecue themed game. This is another game made by 6 students, 2 programmers, 4 artists, and all of them went on to work in industry. Full Spine, This game's on Steam, recently went free. Skyland's also on Steam. Um, and something that, so as I brought it up earlier, but I'll repeat myself because I think it's important. All IP that our students produce belongs to them. The only thing that we reserve the right to do is to use it, as I'm using it right now, in advertising, because we are very, very proud of our students' work. Um, no part of this is made by the teachers. The only thing the teachers do in third year is just help the students scope their projects and make sure that they meet their the deadlines. So if the 6 students said that they're going to do Crossy Roads over the course of 32 weeks in year 3, we'd probably say it's a little bit too simple for a team of 6. If, on the other hand, a team of 6 said, gonna make World of Warcraft, we'd probably caution them and say maybe they need to scope it down a little bit. The thing is, the technology is improving at such a rate, I wouldn't be surprised that there would be a potential for 6 people to make something like World of Warcraft at some point in the future. The content is the hard one there, but just think about the fact that some of you may have played BattleBit. That's made by 3 people, I think. One programmer, one designer, one artist. So it's definitely possible. But BattleBit graphically, it's like, yeah, not quite there. The students made pixel game projects for third year. They haven't. We don't have necessarily anything against that. I think the reason most students pick 3D in this way is because they also want to use these for applying for work. People have made so pixel projects, yes, but usually they're year 1 or year 2 projects. For year 3, a lot of students pick something that they want to put in their portfolio. So yes, there are pixel projects throughout the 3 years, but for third year, usually everyone tends to stylized or realistic 3D. Yeah. Cool. Aria, just to show that there's again a variety of art styles that our students pick. We in third year we don't dictate what kind of game that students should make. They make 3 prototypes, they pick the strongest one and take it further. And all we do is just guide them along in that process. I think this is actually one of the strengths of our degree programs. As I was saying earlier that the programmers and artists work together, and the interdisciplinary respect that the programmers have to have for art and how long things take to make things look nice, and also the artists understanding how difficult programming can be. Something that you might think would be very easy to adjust. So you still need to be very diplomatic in the way you communicate that to somebody who comes from a very, I think both disciplines have an element of creativity. Both disciplines have an element of kind of a linear logical thinking, specifically because we're kind of bound by the hardware that we're trying to develop for. But at the same time, yeah, having that understanding, naming your files correctly and everything, that's what makes our graduates, I think, just that little bit stronger than potentially anybody coming from some other institution. Cool. Another game, Longhouse. This one's on itch.io. Team of 6. A Viking village town defense kind of game. Floating islands, and then you constantly getting raided, and you're trying to gather resources like a puzzle RTS style of game. Very cool. The UI artists for this game went on to work at Weta on their latest gaming Hobbit project. Just yeah, like a very talented UI artist. This is an interesting one. So again, some of these stories they are anecdotal. It doesn't necessarily mean that what happened to these students will happen to you, but it's good to share what does happen sometimes. This was a team of 12 students. They wanted to make a team of 12, and we said that that was just too big, so they split into 2 teams of 6. This is one of the teams made this project called Zeitgeist. We had a studio from A44 in Wellington come by the school. They checked out the third year projects and said, we want to talk to them to see if we can hire them. And we said, that's fantastic. Who do you want to talk to specifically? And they said, all of them. So they gave job offers to 12 people all at once because they were buying into not just the skills, but the camaraderie of the team as well. Not everyone took the job. Some people wanted to stay in Auckland and their job was in Wellington. But yeah, it was a very cool kind of thing. They went on to work on the game called Flintlock in Wellington. One second, is this possible to study a course online? Oh, yep, I'll answer that question. And how does it work day to day life? So It is a full-time course. Though now we've been approved recently, we've been approved to cover it part-time as well. Uh, Full-time is basically 40 hours a week. It's 20 hours contact and 20 hours you'll be doing your own kind of homework time. Is it possible to do a job whilst you study? Yes, but it's very hard. So if if you're super brilliant at art or programming and you think you can handle it, it's definitely the top tier challenge is trying to work part-time while studying full-time. The reason I say that, we've had students who've done it and it worked for them, but it's rare because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Um, on that note, is it possible to study on campus but do a few weekly online classes? Okay, I could talk about that as well. If you're an on-campus student, we have some classes that are online as well, even for on-campus students. So we have on-campus classes and some classes that are online only for everyone, online and online on-campus students. If you're on campus and you're not feeling well, we are very comfortable with you just staying home until you get well. And if you're well enough to be online from home, then we're fine with that as well. So usually the beginning of the year is quite packed because everybody wants to be on campus. But there's definitely an advantage. The disadvantage, I'll talk about this a little bit later as well. The advantage of being on campus is that you get to face-to-face interact with other people. The advantage of being online, and some of you might want to be online specifically because we're doing this session online. The games industry is very versatile, and some studios have adapted to being very online friendly as well. But the jobs of the online only or online mixed kind of studios are few and far between. So it does happen, but it's not, you can't expect that from every single games company in the world. This but here online and other on campus. Yeah, so and to be honest, we haven't seen any if you're a very motivated student, you will do fine online, you'll do fine on campus. If you struggle with motivation, I would recommend being on campus. When I say motivation, maybe that's a poor choice of words. If yeah, motivation, attention, like if being around other people really gives you an additional oomph and getting stuff done, then on campus is a lot better. But if I'm studying at the moment in Australia with Torrens University, and because that's an Australian school, I'm in New Zealand, I'm an online part-time student, and it works fine for me. But I'm doing it part-time as well, so I think it would be hard doing multiple classes online on top of a full-time job. So yeah, feel free to type any other questions you might have surrounding that. I'll just move on to some more game projects. Let's go forward. Time Drum. This is definitely a game that I think if teachers had an input into game design, we wouldn't have been creative enough to recommend this. This is the team that made this called it Gods with Dead Bods, and basically you're these DFI giants who are running around on the surface of these planets, trying to bump each other off the planet. And when you do, you gather a little crowd of people at your feet. This was made in Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine doesn't come with this planet gravity technology. That's something that they custom made themselves. And again, I think everyone and the team who worked on this went on to work in industry. Some of them are chief technical directors now of game studios here in New Zealand. This was quite a few years ago that they made this, but yeah, very cool, very creative game. And again, for us, it was just for teachers on the project. It was just a motivational. It was just a matter of trying to keep the students motivated and holding on to the vision that they had originally on the project. Yeah, very cool and creative. SRC, a game where there is no speed limit. It's a robot racing game set in the future and made in Unity game engine. I believe it was 3 artists, 3 programmers as well. Usually we try to keep teams of 5 and actually between 4 and 6 with an occasional 7. Sometimes there's also more, but the more people on the project doesn't necessarily mean the project's going to be better. It becomes just more management for the students to try to get everybody on the same page. Which time are they usually the These sessions would be possible to study online. Time difference. Um, the sessions start at 8:30 in the morning on New Zealand time, and that's the earliest class, and the classes finish at 5:30 in the afternoon. But you usually wouldn't, I say usually, but on occasion it does happen. You wouldn't have classes that run the whole day. Sometimes it does happen. Um, and if you do have that, then you can have a day in the week, which is going to be an empty slot um, across the board. Now, the very important thing to actually, thank you for asking this, Daniel. Um, our timetables are fixed for the duration of the semester. So once you get given a timetable, if you are going to be doing part-time work, you can plan around the timetable. We're not going to be shifting subjects midway through the term of semester. So it's possible. The other thing as well, um, the classes run the entirety of the semester in the same time slot, and you're studying multiple subjects. So you might be doing, if you're an art student, you might be doing introduction to fundamental art, so anatomy. You might be doing that on Mondays, and then on Tuesday you're doing digital art, painting, and then you'd be doing game maker paper on Wednesday, and then on Thursday you might have a little bit of a online catch-up session for the game maker, and then you're also going to have another class. But those slots, I don't have a time. Actually, thank you for bringing up this question, because from this point forward, I'm actually going to include a timetable in our presentation, because it's a really good question. But you can be assured that that time slot isn't going to be jumping around. It's going to be fixed for the 16-week duration. We have 2 semesters, semester 1, semester 2, and we also have 2 intakes. One intake is in the February, one intake is in July. The February intake is usually larger for both software engineers and creative technology students, and the July intake is much smaller. We try to keep a ratio of roughly 25-1 teacher. Sometimes it is a little bit larger as far as the student cohort to teacher class, but it's roughly in that category. So again, July students that's a little bit smaller. Oh, I have 5 minutes left. Keep typing the questions, and I'll keep going through this. Sabrina, is there something else after this for these for the people in the session?
They can join the admissions session if they have a specific admissions question, domestic or international, that runs from 4:45 to 5:15. But they're more than welcome to stay on this session to ask you questions for another 5 minutes. Yes, or they can
Okay.
and I can pass them on to you.
Cool, awesome. Here's a list of, I'm going to try to go quickly. A list of game studios in New Zealand, right? Polybridge, Dry Cactus. We have NZ balloons made by Ninja Kiwi, Pickpock, A44, Rocketworks, Wanderer. Again, A44, more games from A44. This is Dredge. We're not in any way related to Dredge, but our students work in all of these game studios, except Dry Cactus, maybe. But it's cool. The games industry scene is definitely growing in New Zealand. Some more game projects as well made by our students. This is a 2 programming students graduated, made their own game, pixel art game, and then published it on PS Vita. We had a game that recently had 500,000, a student project from 3rd year, that had 500,000 players. Free-to-play game, Bronzebeard's Tavern. If you haven't played it, download and play it. Support them if you can. Design school. All right, let's answer some of these questions. I think you have another question session. What session is recorded for the case someone? Oh yeah, sweet. All of our class sessions are recorded. And so if you miss a class, you can catch up. But I will say this, the recordings are a double-edged sword, because if you miss 3 classes and the class is a 4-hour session, now you're catching up on 12 hours worth of video. That can be pretty rough. So it is recorded, but it's not something I'd rely on, especially if it's multiple classes that you need to catch up on. If someone's doing online, is there an event happening on campus? Be allowed to. But yeah, for sure. If you're an online student, the only reason we keep the online and on-campus students separated, we don't want like 40 students showing up on campus and being like, "Where's my computer?" And it's like they traveled, 3 hours to campus, and now they don't have anywhere to sit. That's kind of a really bad experience for them. But if you want to switch between online and on campus, we're quite happy to do that, provided we have seating space. That's not an issue at all. What kind of jobs can you get from a Bachelor of Creative Technologies? Um, you can work in apps, any apps. You can work in games, anything that requires even web development, anything that, have you ever noticed some websites load quicker and some websites load slower? That's optimization. And a lot of games artists will understand that intimately by the end of the course. So creative technologies is a broad word. As I was saying, it could be wearable technology and 3D printing. But for games art students, it's anything that requires optimization, anything that's, I'll drop another jargon word, anything that's real time, which means it's something that person's interacting with, and it's not pre-rendered. How long does a lecture take? Does it come online? For being able to draw good. You don't need to draw good, but drawing does help. So the thing that I ask of the portfolio for the students who are applying, if you can showcase something technical, something 2D and something 3D, you do some download Blender, do some 3D tutorials, and be like, hey, look, I can model I modeled I don't know, a box, a crate, or barrel. If you can and textured it, and then if you're like, hey, here's some drawings that I've done, some concept sketches, and I downloaded Unreal and I made a little level in Unreal or Unity. For us, we're like, okay, this person clearly has the capacity to be able to pick up on these concepts because there's a lot of stuff that gets covered in this course. So if you can't draw, hopefully you can 3D model. If you can't do those things, just pick up that skill set, or as I refer to, build the shelf space. And then once you arrive at school, we'll be able to populate your mental bookshelf with a whole bunch of knowledge. Cool. My portfolio doesn't have any 3D art, but I'm really eager to get. So yeah, if you have only 2D or only Unity Unreal or only 3D, that's fine as long as it's relatively strong. The only concern for me personally, for art students in particular, is that everybody, like, it sounds like fun. I want to do games. I want to do stuff, but we don't want to take your money and then you become overwhelmed year one. And you're like, this is way too hard. So that's the only, if you ever apply at school and then I would be turned down your portfolio if I was turning it down, and I apologize in advance if I have to. But the only reason we would turn it down is for you to update your portfolio and reapply again, because we want to make sure that we're not inviting you in and then all of a sudden dousing you in a whole bunch of information, and then you're like, this is way, way too much information for me. And maybe if you get turned down, say, I want to apply part-time, maybe if my portfolio is not that strong, time might be a better option for you. At the campus, are you able to stay on campus all 3 years? Do you have? No, you can stay on campus all 3 years, for sure. But you will, even on campus student will have some online sessions. When would the schedule be released? Great question. I'm not too sure how that actually gets handled with students who are applying. Usually we try to release it before the students join. So it is available on our side of things, but how that gets handled with application and all that side of it. Because that's another really good point, because you might want to make a decision on whether you can study part-time or full-time based on how the schedule is laid out. I don't have, sorry for that one, I don't have an immediate answer. Yeah. Cool. Feel free to reach out to me if need be, or reach out to the school if you have follow-up questions. And yeah, if you're applying, just again, curate your work. Don't show us your life's work if you're an artist. You need to have portfolio if you're an artist. If you're a programmer, you just need to have university entrance. But portfolio won't hurt, but usually it's the artists that need to show portfolio work. The other part of that, do I have an email that I can grab? Actually, I think it's probably best that you reach out through the sales team, and then they'll point you to me in that regard. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, the other thing as well, yeah, download Unity on Unreal. Even if you don't come study here, download Unity on Unreal, experiment, do some tutorials, have some fun with it, build that shelf space, whatever you choose to do. But yeah, highly, highly recommend you get into the interactive side of it, experiment with it, and kind of get some ideas going, and start to make those games. And then when you show up information is just going to slot in because you're going to come with really good questions at that point. Cool. I think that's it. And I'm going to recommend that everyone joins the other session.
Extension session. It's starting for domestic and international. There are 2 sessions. Feel free to join after you drop from this one. And you can email us at domestic@mediadesignschool.com if you're a domestic New Zealand resident or citizen. If you're an international student, you can email us at international@mediadesignschool.com. Thanks, Ivan.
Awesome. No worries. Is it okay if some of them want to hang around and ask questions still, or do we have to shut it down?
I can go on to the next session. I'm not quite sure if it's automatically going to expire. If it does, we do apologize, but I'll try to keep it open. But if you don't see anyone after I've exited, just know it's automatically turned off. So we do apologize for that. Okay, but I'll give it a go. Thank you so much.
See everyone. I'm just gonna stick around and see what happens. I'm intrigued. See ya. Any other questions, or some people are still joining? I have one question. Go for it, Daniel.
I do have to close it before I go to the next thing.
Okay.
So okay. One question.
One question.
Yeah.
Daniel, and then we'll close it down.
Absolutely.
So I'm making a building in Minecraft for doing there. I will, so okay, this is the, it really depends where your heart sits. If you're interested in design level building, I think art is going to be a better choice for you. I will say those programmers do get paid more than artists, because if the artist is sick, the game looks a little bit uglier. If the programmers are sick or away, the project has to get pushed back, right? And deadlines. So the programming field, if money is the focus, then I would say, and you are like, I could go either way. And you're scientifically minded, I'd recommend maybe going with programming. If you're like, nah, art's my passion, that's what I want to do, then I'll definitely recommend going for the creative technology side of it. If the entirety of your portfolio is just Minecraft related stuff, I'd recommend just including some drawing and some 3D modeling and just experimenting, pushing you. Like, you might have a good design sense, but like showcase the fact that you're not going to get overwhelmed in the course, because that's the only concern I personally have. I think everyone should have the opportunity to get the information. But I also seen many students who join and then drop out because they think it's way too hard. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you so much. We need to end this for now. Thank you. But do feel free to email us if you have any more questions, and we can connect
cool.
Ivan later. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ivan.
See ya. Thank you.